Across Kenya, a potent mix of economic frustration and youthful defiance ignites a new chapter of protest. This is not merely about taxes. It is about the future of a nation fought on the streets and in the digital sphere. The echoes of past struggles now resonate with the fresh, unfiltered voices of a generation demanding to be heard. At the heart of this unrest lies the Kenya Finance Bill of 2024, a legislative proposal designed to overhaul the nation's tax structure. Originally, it contains measures like an eco-levy on imported goods, a 16% VAT on essential items like bread and mobile phones, and a controversial 2.5% motor vehicle tax. Even more alarming, the bill seeks to grant the KRA, or Kenya Revenue Authority, unchecked access to citizens' financial data without court orders. These proposed changes are aimed at increasing the tax-to-GDP ratio to address debt. However, they threaten to push the cost of living even higher for ordinary Kenyans, sparking widespread alarm. What makes these protests unique is the driving force behind them: Kenya's vibrant Generation Z. Foregoing traditional political rallies, they masterfully harness social media platforms like X, TikTok, and Instagram. Activists translate the complex bill into local languages, use AI tools like ChatGPT to demystify its clauses, and even leak politicians' phone numbers, unleashing a torrent of direct messages and calls. This digital savvy amplifies their calls to action, transforming online discontent into palpable, real-world momentum. The first organized protests erupt on June 18th in Nairobi, drawing hundreds. Despite initial police attempts to disperse crowds with tear gas and mass arrests, the demonstrations continue. The Law Society of Kenya and human rights organizations swiftly condemn the police actions. In an attempt to quell the rising tide, Parliament amends the bill. They remove some of the most contentious clauses, including the VAT on bread and the motor vehicle tax. They also scrap the provision allowing the KRA to access financial data without a court order. Over 200 arrested protesters are released following widespread public outcry. Yet these amendments do little to satisfy the protesters. The mantra quickly becomes #reject not amend, signaling a demand for total withdrawal. On June 20th, the protests surge, spreading to 19 of Kenya's 47 counties. Thousands take to the streets, urging MPs to vote against the bill during its second reading. Despite the nationwide pleas, the bill passes with 204 votes against 115. Security forces respond with water cannons and tear gas, and reports emerge of live ammunition use. The Kenya Red Cross Society reports over 200 injuries, with at least 2 protesters losing their lives. In the wake of these fatalities, the youth declare 7 days of rage, calling for national strike on June 25th. The movement gains significant traction, with Catholic youths in Nairobi condemning the bill as an enemy, and international celebrities like Jamaican dancehall artist Conscience and Ugandan opposition leader Bobi Wine expressing solidarity. Even the decentralized hacker collective Anonymous warns President Ruto of potential cyber attacks, highlighting the global reach of the movement's message. The boiling point arrives on June 25th. Thousands of protesters breach police barricades, storming the parliamentary complex in Nairobi. A section of the building catches fire amidst heavy gunfire from police. Amnesty International Kenya reports numerous injuries and at least 22 fatalities on this single day. President Ruto denounces the events as treasonous, vowing a full response. The Ministry of Defense announces the immediate deployment of the Kenya Defense Forces, or KDF, to assist the police, signaling a grave escalation of the state's response. The deployment of the KDF sparks immediate constitutional debate, as such action typically requires parliamentary approval. A Kenyan judge permits the deployment but mandates that clear areas of operation, duration, and rules of engagement be published within 2 days. Human Rights Watch accuses Kenyan security services of abducting, torturing, and executing citizens believed to be protest leaders. Allegations vigorously denied but subject to ongoing investigation by Kenya's Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Meanwhile, the High Court issues an order prohibiting police from using excessive force, tear gas, water cannons, or live ammunition against protesters, though the KDF deployment proceeds. The international community weighs in, with United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres urging restraint. The United States calls for calm, and 13 other nations express shock at the violence. The International Monetary Fund, whose recommendations partly inspired the bill, issues an apology for the resulting bloodshed, while reiterating the importance of austerity measures for Kenya's economic future. Human rights organizations, content creators, lawyers, and medical officers unite, calling for uninterrupted internet access amid rumors of a government shutdown, demonstrating a broad coalition against the state's actions. Facing unprecedented pressure, President Ruto holds a press conference on June 26, announcing his decision to withhold signing the Finance Bill of 2024 into law, famously stating, "The people have spoken." The bill is formally rejected 2 days later, and Ruto directs a significant 346 billion shillings budget cut across government entities to compensate for the revenue shortfall. This dramatic reversal is a testament to the power of persistent collective action, yet the protests do not cease with the bill's rejection. The demands escalate, shifting from tax reform to calls for President Ruto's resignation. On July 2nd, clashes erupt again in Nairobi and other major cities, with demonstrators barricading main roads and clashing with police. About 272 people face arrest on suspicion of looting, as the movement morphs into a broader anti-government stance. In an attempt to appease the public and address the deep-seated grievances, President Ruto takes significant steps towards accountability and austerity. On July 5th, he apologizes for the arrogance and show of opulence by his legislators and ministers, pledging action against rogue police officers. Days later, on July 11th, he dissolves his entire cabinet, retaining only his deputy president and prime cabinet secretary, later reappointing some former ministers in different roles and even bringing opposition figures into his new cabinet. The Inspector General of Police also resigns amid the outcry. These 2024 protests stand in stark contrast to the anti-government demonstrations of 2023, which followed the previous finance bill. Those protests, largely led by former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, resulted in 6 deaths and dozens of injuries but did not lead to a full withdrawal of the bill. The 2024 movement, spearheaded by a digitally savvy Generation Z, proves more decentralized, adaptable, and ultimately achieves a more significant immediate concession from the government, highlighting a new era of civic engagement in Kenya. The spirit of protest continues to burn bright. On July 7th, a concert in Uhuoru Park commemorates those who lost their lives, coinciding with Saba Saba Sahba Day, a historic day of protest for multi-party democracy in Kenya. Despite a police ban on protests in central Nairobi on July 17th, the High Court quickly issues a conservatory order against it, reaffirming the right to assembly. Even during the swearing-in ceremony of the new cabinet on August 8th, police fire tear gas on protesters, underscoring the ongoing tension and public dissatisfaction. The Kenya Finance Bill protests become a landmark moment in the nation's history, demonstrating the formidable power of organized youth and the evolving dynamics between citizens and the state. They underscore that in the face of perceived injustice, a united and digitally empowered populace can compel even the most entrenched powers to listen and, crucially, to concede. The fight for transparency and accountability continues, but a new precedent for people power has undoubtedly been set.